the new Arts and Culture Minister, a man who, in the not-too-distant future, was appearing at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, didn't seem to find much fault with accepting loans from business people which could have been perceived as bribes. Is he a good cabinet appointment?
Definitely is not. And this is one of the things that I've been saying for the longest time, that I don't even understand why President Ramaphosa kept him as a Deputy Minister of State Security. We know that within state security there's lots of monies. So he's someone that can be trusted with money, in my view, if you go around asking business people for money. Because the same guy who was giving him money, is in court with the then suspended at the time SG of the ANC. So there were just contradictions on how I think even the ANC itself as a party dealt with the matter, but also President Ramaphosa not being able to look beyond factional lines. You know, he remained to be factional because he wanted to secure his seat for the second term as the president of the ANC.
The recurring refrain, though, whenever these issues come up, is that people like Zizi Kodwa, for example, have not been criminally charged and are the subject of criminal investigations, and therefore nothing should stand in the way of them basically ascending up the political ladder, as he's now done, to a ministry. But I wonder if moving him out of the presidency to arts and culture makes any difference in terms of the concerns around him and his dealings outside of work, shall we say.
One can say once you go and admit that indeed I've done this, then he must be out. You know, he did not deny. He admitted, you know, that he did take some of this money. So it's just an issue of morality and being ethical as a leader, you know, that now we start to question that as a leader. And for President Ramaphosa to keep someone who actually admitted to asking for those monies from business people.
Let's talk about the electricity minister, President Cyril Ramaphosa, the man many had already predicted would be announced as the electricity minister, in a first for this country. In the president's speech, he said that the minister and the presidency for electricity would remain in office only for as long as it's necessary to resolve the crisis. But he then says the immediate task is to reduce the severity of load shedding in the coming months and ultimately end it altogether. You take that, you take what Zizi Kodwa was saying about how this is a temporary, basically, ministry. But when you read from what the president said last night, that's an indicator that government itself does not know when the power crisis will come to an end.
Absolutely. I mean, there's been contradictions even between the Minister of Energy and the Minister of Public Enterprise on the crisis. You know, the other one saying 18 months, the other one saying 3 years, you know. So it's clear that it's not clear. It's actually clear that it's not clear on their side when will this crisis end, you know. And it will unfortunately have to take someone who will really be committed, you know, to ending the crisis. If they want to sit there and enjoy the benefits, they can drag the process for long.
And I'm looking at ministers in the presidency. There are about, what, 2 new ministries now added into there. Among them is the Minister of Electricity, yes, but we've also got a minister in the presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, who basically takes over from Mondli Gungubele. What awaits her in that portfolio?
When you listen to what the president was saying yesterday, he spoke about that she will also be responsible for state security. And I can tell you, when you speak, I've spoken to some people within, you know, state security even this afternoon, just to hear their thoughts, you know, what are their views with the new appointment, you know. And for them, they feel that the president seems not to have appetite, you know, to deal with issues of restructuring that department. For an example, they even say in terms of the implementation of the review panel on state security that was led by Sidney Mfumad, who is the current advisor to the president, that there is no political will to actually implement the recommendations of that department. And they are saying that it is falling apart. And this is a bit worrying because, I mean, once state security falls apart, that means we're naked as a country. And
she's already had more than one move through cabinet. Her success rate, where she served in the past, has been, quote-unquote, questionable, shall we say. Does she have the right skill set to fix all that you've just outlined?
The issue also is that the president seems not to understand state security. You are dealing with intelligence people, which they are called spokes in their world. And I don't think that she has the capacity, you know, to actually deal with the challenges that face that department, because there was a deliberate effort to actually dismantle it, and it seems like the president is actually going further to finish what is left of state security. 4
ministries in the presidency, including a minister responsible, as you're saying, for intelligence services, responsible for women, youth and persons with disabilities, will be Dr. Zuma, who moves from cooperative governance. You've also got minister in the presidency responsible for planning, monitoring and evaluation, new addition, President Ramaphosa, and of course the electricity minister. Has there been an over-centralization of power into the presidency? And what about the lack of accountability and oversight which has been flagged? Because these are not ministries that have been able in recent times to be hauled before, let's say, the Public Enterprises Portfolio Committee, for example, to account for their work and their existence.
Absolutely. President Ramaphosa has centralized power. Reason being why I say this, you have Ramaphosa, who was the international relations advisor to the president. You then also have Sputla Ramaphosa, who was head of infrastructure in the presidency. Now they come back now as ministers, in the presidency. That shows that these are like close confidants of the president, and he actually trusts them more than some members who are in parliament. Who have been supporting even the president, part of his faction, because you know that Ramaphosa Marupeng was just sworn in recently with the deputy president. Sputla obviously is the prerogative of the president because he's not a member of parliament, but that shows that he trusts them more than some of the people in his faction who are in parliament as members of parliament.
Paul Mashatile, deputy president, does Ramaphosa have an ally, a co-pilot in him, or a competitor?
I think he's got a competitor. Reason being also, you must remember that 2027 it's the next conference of the ANC. Obviously, Paul Mashatile is in that position. He will be also working towards that because he knows that President Ramaphosa is not coming back. But he's not part of the inner core of the faction of the Cyril Ramaphosa cabal, which some are known within that faction to be the Crisani cabal, who are not comfortable with him.
I want to talk about recycling, because it's been a theme that has re-emerged, especially when you read what the opposition parties have been saying. For me, the most glaring recycle would be that of Dipuo Peters, who's now back as Deputy Minister of Small Business Development. How do you bring back someone who for years was an actual minister and had appeared to have been on her way out of mainstream politics, as it were, now coming back as Deputy Minister? Were there no younger candidates, for instance, who have the requisite skills to be able to act as the deputies in that department?
Absolutely. I mean, Dipuo Peters is someone who was a premier during the era of Thabo Mbeki, in the Northern Cape, and then under Zuma she was the Minister of Energy and Minister of Transport. For me, it does not make sense. Why would she come back as the Deputy Minister of Small Business? But also, I think this also shows that that there is no appetite, for this government when it comes to issues of small business, because even now I don't know what the current Minister of Small Business is up to in terms of trend, because small business plays a very important role when you talk about economic recovery plan, building the economy, because without the small business, in terms of informal business, it becomes very difficult to build the economy of this country.
So you make a good point about how we don't know what that department is doing on the daily, and I wonder how much of that has to do with us as the media, even political pundits, because often we focus on, for example, now everyone is concerned about the Minister for Electricity, but I wonder, even in that due attention, we're not allowing certain ministers and certain ministries to basically have an easy time where no one is actually watching whether they are delivering and doing what they're mandated to do, because there is a fixation on certain issues that are urgent, yes, but all of government's work should be urgent.
Absolutely, across all departments, we need to do an analysis and a review, in terms of the performance, and especially when you look at the outcomes this morning about the GDP, that really shows that there's a serious challenge, in this country. So small business, as I say, it plays a very instrumental role. But I think personally that ministry should be actually scrapped, and small business should go back where it was placed under DTI.
What do you think from Ramaphosa's opponents, critics? Zuma, Dr. Nkosazana Zuma is the only one who basically has retained a position in cabinet, moved, yes, from her portfolio into the presidency, but she's kept a job while Lindiwe Sisulu and others have basically been fired.
Lindo Susu, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini, one thing about her is that she's a very strategic politician. You know, you would even look at when she was speaking out on the parliament and not voting according to the party line. 2 days or a day before conference, you know, the ANC tried to say she must go to the DC and so forth. And one of the things that she did, she wrote a long letter to the ANC explaining her position, and the ANC had to withdraw its position on her. This is a seasoned cadre, and she was not as reckless as Lindiwe Sisulu when she used to, you know, talk about the judiciary and so many things. But she's one person that people will say that she's been hardworking, you know, under very difficult times. But she's got very much a lot of experience, you know, as a seasoned cadre of the ANC.
Rebone Tau, good to speak to you. Thank you so much for coming in tonight.